The average American at 50 has a net worth of $1,364,000 on paper, and the median, meaning what half of 50-somethings actually have, is $180,227. Here's a layer that changes everything. For middle wealth Americans, home equity makes up more than half of total net worth at most ages, and at the median net worth, home equity represents 59 to 73% of total wealth for Americans in their 50s through 80s. That equity doesn't generate income and can't easily be tapped without selling or borrowing. So when you strip out the house and look at what's actually investable, the assets you can draw from without selling your primary residence, the median 401k balance for Americans aged 55 to 64 is $95,642, according to Vanguard's 2025 How America Saves report. That is not a typo. I'm Tom, and in this video, I'm going to give you three things: the real benchmark, not the inflated one; the real gap, including the hidden assumption inside your retirement math that almost nobody talks about; and the three non-obvious levers that actually change your trajectory at 50. Not motivational, not vague. Numbers. Here's the structural problem with how retirement benchmarks get reported in this country. The finance industry leads with the average because the average sounds better. The average at 50 sounds like $1 million story. The median sounds like a crisis, so they bury it. And the real investable number stripped of home equity sounds so alarming they never mention it at all. Understanding this three-layer gap is the entire game, and I'll spend the next 20 minutes making it impossible to unsee. Let me give you one mental anchor that I'm going to return to throughout this video. Think of your net worth as a trophy case. You open it, and it looks full. Big polished trophy in the center, that's your house. A couple smaller ones, a car, a savings account, maybe a brokerage balance. And in the back corner, there's a 401k. From across the room, the case looks impressive. The problem is, you cannot retire on a trophy. You can only retire on things that either generate income or that you can convert to cash without fundamentally disrupting your life. And when you actually inventory those things, the case empties out a lot faster than the brochures suggest. That catchphrase, "you cannot retire on a trophy," is going to pay off harder in about 10 minutes. Keep it in mind. Now, let me walk you through what the data actually says, starting with the number that every financial news headline uses and why it's almost designed to mislead you. As of January 2026, according to Empower's platform data drawn from their personal dashboard, the average net worth for Americans in their 50s is $1,364,050. That's the headline. Median figures are far lower than averages, highlighting how a few high-wealth households skew results. In the 50s, the average net worth is $1,364,050, but the median is only $180,000. $227. This means half of households in that age range have less than $180,000 in net worth. $1,364,000 versus $180,000. That is not a statistical quirk. That is the entire story of wealth inequality in America, compressed into a single comparison. A small number of very wealthy households pull the average far above what most people actually have. If you lined up every 50-year-old in this country by net worth and walked to the exact middle of that line, the person standing there has about $180,000. That is your real peer benchmark. And roughly 65% of it is home equity. Now here's the second compression, because it's not enough to just know you're in the median range. You need to know what that actually funds in retirement. Vanguard's data from their 2025 How America Saves report, covering nearly 5 million defined contribution plan participants, breaks it down by age group. For Americans aged 45 to 54, the average 401k balance is $188,643. The median is $67,796. For the 55 to 64 group, these are people with an average of 10 years to go until traditional retirement age. The average is $271,320. The median is $95,642. $95,642. Under the 4% rule, which assumes you withdraw 4% of your portfolio in year one of retirement and adjust annually for inflation $95,642, generates $3,825 per year. That's $318 per month. You cannot retire on $318 per month. You can add Social Security, and we'll talk about what that actually looks like in a few minutes, but the underlying portfolio math is alarming for the majority of people approaching retirement. There is one number that reframes this entire problem in a useful way. Fidelity says savers should have 6 times their salary saved by age 50 and 8 times their salary socked away by age 60. If you're earning $75,000 per year, close to the US median individual income 6 times, that is $450,000 by age 50. The median 401k balance for the 45 to 54 age group indicates that at least half of workers are not even close to accomplishing that goal. And the median is $67,796. That is a gap of nearly $382,000 from a benchmark set by your own retirement account manager. The trophy case does not retire you. The liquid assets in the corner do. In a few minutes, I'm going to show you the exact mechanism that's been quietly doubling this problem for decades, and it has nothing to do with your savings rate. But first, here's why the gap between where you are and where you need to be is actually even larger than what these numbers show on the surface. According to Northwestern Mutual's 2026 Planning and Progress Study released on April 1st, 2026, conducted by the Harris Poll among 4,000, 375 US adults, Americans' magic number to retire comfortably climbed to $1,460,000. That number has increased more than 15% in just 1 year, adding another $200,000 to last year's total. The new target reflects, in the words of Northwestern Mutual's Chief Field Officer John Roberts, a convergence of factors from persistent inflation and longer life expectancies to uncertainty about the future of Social Security. Now set that target against what the generation most likely watching this video, Generation X, born between 1965 and 1980, currently aged 46 to 61, actually has. The average Gen X 401k balance is $222,100, according to Fidelity Investments' fourth quarter 2025 analysis of its 24.8 million plan participants. The gap between 1,460,000 and 222,100 is $1,237,900. That is not a motivation problem. That is a math problem. And the math problem has specific inputs. Generation X is the first generation heavily dependent on 401k plans. On average, Gen Xers expect to retire with $711,771 saved, far short of the $1,116,747 they believe will be necessary for a comfortable retirement. That equates to a $404,976 savings gap, which is the largest among all generations surveyed, according to the Schroders 2025 US Retirement Survey. Just 16% of Gen Xers believe they have saved enough money. 16%. That means 84 out of every 100 people in this generation are staring at a gap they can feel but can't quite quantify. Overall, 69% of Gen X workers say they're behind on their retirement savings, including 47% who say they are significantly behind more than any other generation, according to a Bankrate retirement report from late 2025. But you might be sitting here thinking, okay, the gap is real, but I've got 15 years to close it. I'll work until 65, contribute more aggressively, let compounding do the rest. And that plan would be solid if the 15 years were guaranteed. They're not. By the way, hit subscribe if you find this useful. YouTube's algorithm may never surface my videos again if you don't. I make these as data dense as I can. And I'd rather you find the next one than hope the algorithm figures it out. Here is the piece of the retirement equation that breaks the entire calculation most people are running. You think the savings gap is the problem. The savings gap is a symptom. The real problem is the assumption embedded in your timeline. More than half of workers, 58%, retire earlier than they planned, usually due to unforeseen circumstances, according to research from the Transamerica Center for Retirement Studies. The median age they actually stop working is 62, 3 years shy of the traditional retirement age of 65. Of those who retired early, most pointed to health-related reasons at 46%, followed by employment issues at 43% and family reasons at 20%. Only 21% said they retired early because they were financially stable. Read that again. Only 1 in 5 people who left the workforce before they planned did so by choice. The other 79% were pushed. Their body gave out, their company restructured, or a family situation pulled them away. The plan was 65, the exit was 62. And all the retirement math they'd been doing assumed 3 more years of contributions, 3 fewer years of withdrawals, and Social Security at full retirement age. Gen X stands alone as the only generation where a majority 54% say they do not expect to be ready for retirement, according to the Northwestern Mutual 2026 study. There is a man I want you to think about. I'll call him Marcus. He's 52, a project manager at a mid-sized manufacturing company in Indiana. He has done the things you're supposed to do. He has a 401k he's contributed to for 18 years. He owns a home he bought in 2002 for $215,000, a house that Zillow now values at $430,000. He has no credit card debt. His financial advisor ran a projection 2 years ago and told him he was on track for 65. Marcus told his wife they'd be fine. He believed it. His net worth, on paper, approximately $550,000. Trophy case looks good. He's got the house. He's got the retirement account. He's got the story. And I'll come back to Marcus in about 8 minutes, because what happened at 58 is the reason this video exists. Stay with me. Here is something that the financial advisory industry has a structural incentive to never explain clearly, because if they did, you might stop hiring them. The fee sitting between you and your retirement number is the most expensive thing in your financial life right now, and it compounds against you every single year, silently, in every market condition, regardless of performance. Here is the framework. 3 levels of fee drag, each one operating invisibly, each one compounding against your base. Level 1, the expense ratio. This is the annual fee embedded in the investment vehicle itself, the mutual fund, the actively managed account. There is an easy option to invest on your own in a low-cost index fund, costing about 0.03% per year. Compare that to 0.7 to 1%, which is also touted as low cost, but is 30 times more expensive. On a $200,000 portfolio, the difference between a 0.03% index fund and a 1% managed fund is not 0.97%. Over 30 years, because of compounding, it's the difference between $761,000 and $574,000 in final balance. That's $187,000 in lost compounding from a $200,000 starting point on one portfolio from one fee. A 0.5% difference in expense ratios on a $100,000 initial investment cost, approximately $165,800 in foregone wealth over 30 years, according to the Institute of Business and Finance. That's more than you started with. The fee compounds against you faster as the portfolio grows because it's always a percentage of the total, and the total is larger every year. The fee isn't taking a slice of today's portfolio. It's removing the seed capital for tomorrow's compounding. The cumulative effect of 30 years of seed capital removal is what produces the wealth gap. Level 2, the advisor fee. For a $2 million portfolio earning 7% annually, a 1% annual fee drag costs you over $375,000 in lost wealth over just 10 years, according to financial analysis from Mezzi Financial. Not 30 years, 10. A 1% difference in fees can mean working 5 to 7 more years before retirement, according to White Cloud Wealth Management's analysis. 5 to 7 more years of your life. Not $5,000 to $7,000. Years. Let me say that differently, because I think it should make you genuinely angry in a productive way. If you have a $500,000 portfolio and you're paying your advisor 1% annually, you're spending $5,000 a year for asset management. Maybe that advisor's worth it. Maybe they're doing tax loss harvesting, estate planning, behavioral coaching. But if they're managing a portfolio of broadly diversified index funds, that a low-cost robo-advisor would charge you 0.3% to manage, you are paying a premium of roughly $3,500 a year for the privilege of having a human being place the same trades. Over 20 years with compounding, that premium costs you roughly $300,000. Not in fees, in lost compounding on the fees. Oh, but my advisor beats the market. Sure, a 2% annual fee compounds to destroy $3.3 million of a $7.2 million portfolio over 40 years. This makes most actively managed high-fee funds economically unjustifiable, when historical data show that almost nobody beats the market over multi-decade time periods, according to research cited by 24/7 Wall Street. Level 3, and this is the one that no spreadsheet can capture: behavioral fee drag. This is the cost of being human with a brokerage account in a volatile market. The cost of selling when things feel scary and buying when things feel safe, which is the exact opposite of optimal. Decades of Dalbar behavioral research show the average investor underperforms the market they're invested in by approximately 1.5% to 2% annually, purely due to emotional decision making. You're not picking bad funds. You're picking good funds and then exiting them during the 3-week period in November when everything feels like it's collapsing. Then you get back in 6 months later after the recovery. That cycle, repeated 4 or 5 times over a 15-year window, is worth hundreds of thousands of dollars in the wrong direction. Wait, I'm not that reactive. Maybe, but almost everyone believes that about themselves. Right up until the moment the portfolio drops 20% and the news cycle is on fire and someone on CNBC says the word recession, here's the financial advisor's response to all of that. Well, that's exactly why you need me, said the financial advisor, from inside the fee structure he's charging you to stay calm for him. I find the incentive alignment here genuinely funny in the way you laugh at something when the alternative is just being furious. Knowing these numbers is one thing. Building a system around them is something else entirely. I had this data sitting in front of me years ago, and it didn't change my behavior until I stopped thinking of it as interesting and started thinking of it as a math problem with a specific answer. I spent about a year pulling together 50 years of actual retirement data, not opinion, not projection, not what if the market returns 8% fantasy math, and distilled it into a digital book called The Exit Code. It's 8 chapters of analysis built on what actually worked across different market entry points, different income brackets, different retirement timelines. A couple elements in there connect directly to everything in this video. The first is what I call the 58% rule, the buffer architecture, specifically designed for someone who gets pushed out of the workforce at 55 or 58 instead of 65. Because if you plan for 65 and leave at 58, your current financial architecture probably breaks. The book builds the structure that doesn't. The second is the dynamic withdrawal method, a replacement for the 4% rule that accounts for sequence of returns risk in a way the standard framework doesn't. Because the year you retire matters as much as the size of your portfolio. A 20% market drop in year 1 of retirement is categorically more damaging than a 20% drop in year 10. You can get the exit code for less than what you'd spend on a dinner out for 2 through the link in the description. If you're reading the same data I'm reading and want the systematic framework built around it rather than another set of rules of thumb, that's what it is. Every year you wait, compounding works against you by a specific amount. That's not urgency marketing, it's just what the math does. Now, back to Marcus. Marcus is 58. He's still the same company from before, but that company just announced a restructuring. His entire department is being eliminated. He receives a package, 6 months of severance. He's 58 years old, no longer employed, with a 401k of $210,000, home equity of roughly $230,000, and a wife who is 54 and works part-time. His plan was 65. He's 7 years early. Medicare starts at 65. He needs health insurance immediately. In the private market, coverage for a 58-year-old with no employer subsidy can run between $1,000 and $2,000 per month in premiums before he even touches a deductible. That's $12 to $24,000 per year for 7 years to bridge the insurance gap until Medicare. A total exposure of $84,000 to $168,000 from the same account he was planning to grow for 7 more years. Meanwhile, his 401k, he cannot touch it without penalty until 59 and a half. He's a few months short, so he's drawing from savings to survive the gap. The 6 months of severance runs out. He starts tapping the IRA. The sequence of returns clock starts ticking against him because he's withdrawing during a period of economic volatility, depleting the base on which recovery would have compounded. Marcus's problem was not his savings rate. He was responsible. His problem was architecture. He had no cash buffer outside his investment portfolio. He had no insurance bridge plan. He had no social security strategy because no one had sat him down and explained that every month he claims early permanently reduces his lifetime benefit. He walked into a 58% scenario with a 65-year-old plan. His trophy case looked full. His fuel gauge was empty. You cannot retire on a trophy. Now the good news, and I mean the actual good news, not the motivational poster kind, at 50, the gap is large and specific and solvable. Here are 3 levers that most people in their 50s either don't know exist or actively avoid pulling because it requires looking at numbers they don't want to see. Lever 1, the account structure audit. Most people at 50 have retirement savings scattered across a current employer, 401k, 1 or 2 orphaned 401ks from previous employers sitting somewhere generating fees. Maybe an IRA they opened in their 30s and haven't looked at since. A taxable brokerage account and some cash. Each of these is aging differently, taxed differently, carrying a different fee structure. The single highest ROI financial activity available to you right now is not increasing your contribution rate, it's auditing the existing accounts. Specifically, roll every orphan 401k into a single rollover IRA at a low-cost provider. Look up the expense ratio on every fund in every account and eliminate anything above 0.2% without a clear performance justification. In the final quarter of 2025, Gen X increased their 401k contributions by 10.7%. And Gen Xers, who have been saving in the same retirement account for the past 15 years, have balances of nearly $700,000, roughly $80,000 more than the average 401k balance across all generations. Consistency and consolidation are more powerful than contribution rate in the long run. But consolidation requires actually looking at where the money, someone with $250,000 scattered across 3 old 401ks at a blended expense ratio of 1.2% is paying $3,000 a year in fees every year in every market with no performance guarantee. Index funds through Vanguard, Fidelity Investments, or Charles Schwab with expense ratios under 0.1% eliminate the fee structure that destroys long-term returns. That one afternoon of paperwork to consolidate and switch to index funds is worth, mathematically, more than 6 months of cutting your restaurant budget. Lever 2, stress test the 58% scenario. Take your current retirement math, the one your advisor ran, or the one you ran in your head, and rerun it with an exit at 61 instead of 65. Not because you want to leave early, because statistically, you're more likely to leave at 62 than at 65, and your plan needs to survive that. What happens to your 4% rule math if you have 3 fewer years of contributions and 3 more years of expenses? What happens to your Social Security if you claim at 62 instead of 67? Claiming at 62 will result in a benefit that's about 30% less than your full benefit. A reduction that's permanent, lasting for the rest of your life, regardless of what happens to market conditions or healthcare costs. And here is the lever most people miss on Social Security. Delaying collection of Social Security benefits from age 62 to 70 can increase benefits by up to 76%. If your projected benefit at 62 is $1,800 per month, at 70, it would be approximately $3,168 per month. That's a difference of $1,300 $368 every single month. Over a 20-year retirement, that's $328,000 in additional lifetime income from the same underlying contributions you already made. The challenge isn't knowing this math. The challenge is having enough liquid assets to live on between 62 and 70, which is exactly the cash flow problem that Lever 1 helps solve if you execute it early enough. Lever 3, convert your understanding of net worth into a funded retirement ratio. Stop measuring your total net worth. Start measuring what percent of your projected retirement spending is covered by income-generating liquid assets. Take your estimated annual retirement spending, not the fantasy number, the real one, and divide it by 4% to get the portfolio size that would fund it indefinitely under conservative assumptions. Then compare that target to what you actually have in liquid investable assets today. Not the house, not the car, not the pension promise you're not sure the company will honor. The actual number you can convert to cash flow without selling your primary residence. Most people have never done this calculation. Most people have a vague sense that their net worth is in some direction and hope the direction is right. The funded retirement ratio makes the gap specific, which means it makes it solvable. A specific gap has a specific close rate. You know exactly how many years of maximum contributions close it. You know exactly what return rate you need. You know exactly what fee drag costs you. It becomes engineering instead of anxiety. Among those with retirement accounts, 23% have 1 year or less of their current annual income saved. Gen X shows some progress, with 49% now having at least 4 times their annual income saved, up from 41% the previous year. Yet 1 in 5 Gen Xers, 20%, have already delayed retirement due to financial concerns, according to Northwestern Mutual's 2026 data. That last number is the subplot. 20% of Gen Xers have already delayed. Not because they wanted to, because the math forced them to. And the ones who are best positioned aren't the ones who save the most aggressively in any given year. Gen Xers, who have been saving in the same 401k for 15 years, have accumulated more than any other generation with balances of nearly $700,000, according to Fidelity's fourth quarter 2025 data. The variable that matters most is not rate of contribution in peak years. It's continuity. Boring, continuous, fee-minimized, panic-free continuity. Marcus, by the way, ends up okay. Not because of anything heroic. He takes a part-time consulting role at 61, enough to cover insurance and basic living. He delays Social Security to 67 instead of 62, which adds roughly $400 per month to his permanent income. He consolidates his old retirement accounts, drops his expense ratios from 1% to 0.05, and stops meeting with his advisor quarterly. Because that advisor's quarterly anxiety about rebalancing was costing him 2 trades a year and about $4,000 in behavioral error. He's not rich, but his fuel gauge is accurate, and he knows what he has. That turns out to be more important than the number on the trophy. Let me leave you with the 3 specific, non-generic takeaways from everything I just said. 1, calculate your investable net worth today. Not total net worth, investable. Subtract the house, the car, any illiquid assets. What's left is your actual retirement portfolio. Write down that number. Most people have never seen it clearly, separated from the headline number. Once you see it, everything else gets rational. 2, open every retirement account you own. Look up the expense ratio of every fund and compare it to the Vanguard Total Market Index Fund, which charges 0.03% as of 2026. If any of your funds are more than 5 times that cost, meaning above 0.15%, you need a specific justification, not vibes. A performance record over at least 10 years that net of fees beats the index, you almost certainly won't find one. Historical data show that almost nobody beats the market over multi-decade time periods. The fee is the thing you can control. Control it. 3, model the 58% scenario before it happens to you. Run your retirement math from 61, not 65. See what breaks. Build a cash buffer outside your investment portfolio. Ideally, 2 to 3 years of living expenses in low-risk liquid assets, specifically to absorb an early exit without forcing you to either claim Social Security early or liquidate your equity investments during a drawdown. Marcus needed that buffer. He didn't have it. You have time to build it. He didn't have that time when it mattered. 46% of Americans say they don't expect to be financially prepared for retirement, and nearly half, 48%, believe it is somewhat or very likely they will outlive their savings. According to Northwestern Mutual's 2026 Planning and Progress study, nearly half. That's not a niche problem. That's the median American's relationship with the future. And yet, the median household net worth has increased 37% since 2019, after inflation, the sharpest increase recorded in the history of the Federal Reserve survey, and the highest household net worth ever recorded adjusted for inflation. People are accumulating. They're just accumulating in the wrong piles, measuring the wrong numbers, and paying invisible tolls on the money they've already built. The gap between the headline number and the real one is not a conspiracy. It's just a structural misalignment between how the financial services industry reports wealth and how wealth actually funds a life. Understanding that misalignment is worth more than any single investment decision you'll make this year. Lazy investing built more fortune than crypto memes. The people who tried to close the gap with speculative trades and high turnover strategies mostly didn't. The people who invested consistently in boring, low-cost index funds, kept their fees near zero, stress-tested their plans against the 58% scenario, and didn't panic in the bad quarters, they end up with options. Home equity represents less than 15% of net worth for the top 1% at most ages. A reminder that liquid, investable assets are what generate the cash flow that sustains retirement, not the trophy, the fuel. Your trophy case looks how it looks. The question is whether the corner where the 401k lives is big enough to matter, and whether you've swept out the fee dust that's been accumulating in there for 15 years while you weren't looking. Now you know what to look for.